Thank you for that introduction. Sometimes still my images are a little bit silly, so you're not far off yet. I want to start with a story from my adolescence. I was born in Beirut, and we fled the Lebanese Civil War in 1975, and we went to the United States. And we lived in these impossibly American places like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And I remember very clearly, we went one day with my father to speak with somebody. I think he was looking for work, or maybe it was just a meeting. And so this man said, Ara Oshagan, tu kima inch teach genek. I had never in my life heard such a construction. Armenian sentence with an English word in it. You know, we grew up in Beirut in a very sort of isolated Armenian environment, and I had never heard of it before in my life. And I thought it was very funny. I thought it was ludicrous. 30 years later, in my family now, 4 kids, common phrases are Bab batul machur gudas, or elbows saftutsi. Armenian words in English sentences, or the other way around, English sentences or Armenian sentences with English words. It's all mixed together. And so what I want to address and ask and try to figure out, what I've tried to figure out over the last 15 years is, what is this mixing? What's happening when we're mixing languages, when we speak? And it's not just languages, it's about cultures, it's about ways of thinking, ways of life, states of mind that come together, that mix in our lives. There is a certain, what I would call, a identity continuum. On the left side of the continuum is what I kind of call the singular identity. This person or people with this identity would be, perhaps an example would be like an Armenian villager who's been living on the land that his forefathers lived on many generations, is connected to that land, knows one, maybe knows a couple of languages, but really is connected to a single culture, uniform, with a continuous history in a place and time. And he can find, he says he belongs to this place, right? The other end of the continuum is what I would call a hybrid identity. And example that I want to give for that is a very good friend of mine in New York. His name is Jean. So Jean was born in Istanbul. His father was Armenian, and his mother was Greek. His father didn't speak any Greek, and his mother didn't speak any Armenian. So the language of their household was French. And he also had to speak Turkish when he went outside the household. So he grew up with French, Armenian, Turkish, Greek, and then later on, of course, English. And so his identity is what is it? You know, you can't point to it. You can't point to it and say, Jean is this or that. But his identity really, I think, reveals itself, crystallizes itself in the passage between his languages sometimes, more his ways of thinking, what is called sort of the performance of culture. So you have a state of mind of this culture and you sort of shift. We do that all the time in the diaspora, right, in the United States, where you shift from English to Armenian, but you're not just shifting languages, you're kind of shifting your whole mentality, the way you approach it, the way you think, the way you do things. And so that's sort of the hybrid identity on one extreme. And I think everybody can probably place themselves somewhere in this continuum, one end or the other. I would probably be somewhere in the middle because I have an Armenian identity as well as an American identity, and so they're always clashing and melding, and so my identity would reveal itself between these in this passage. So identity for me is process. It's a passage, right? And so my work for what I want to show today is 2 projects that I've worked on for the last 20 years that address these issues in a general way. All right, is this going to work? Where is the first slide? There we go. So the first project I want to speak about is called Fatherland, and this is a project I did in Nagorno-Karabakh from 1998 all the way to 2007. To me, it had to do, coming from a diasporan hybrid identity, to me, it had to do with trying to find that singularity, trying to find that place where there's continuity, there's history, there's earth under your feet. You know, in the diaspora, I say, like, there's no ground under your feet, right? You really belong nowhere because you belong kind of everywhere. And so some of the images in this work are about that singular sort of identity that you find in a place like Karabagh, right? Here's a birth. And the construction of the image is also, in a sense, connected to that singularity. This is an image from Karabagh, and whenever I show this image in the United States, like when I show it to like school children, they never know what's going on here. They have no idea what's going on here. So, and I have to always explain. But here, I think most people probably realize this has been a slaughtered cow has been slaughtered, and so this is part of life, a way of life, right? Connected to the land, connected to the animals, to the plants, that everybody lives together and interconnectedly, right? The singular sort of identity that I say, this is mine, right? Karabagh. This is the choir in the church of Shushi. And so Christianity is also part of that singularity. And family. But also an image like this. So even though the main thrust of this work, that's how it started out, was trying to find this time and place that was singular, I made images like this. And this is an image that is reflected in glass that's acting like a mirror, and so it's this sort of cascading mirror. And so this person that's crossing the street is like coming out from behind this mirror. And to me, I looked at this image for a long time. It was part of my series of edits, and I was looking at this image. I was trying to figure out why is it that I was connecting to this image, and I wanted to put it in my book. And the reason I realized is that he's revealing himself. He's coming out from behind this mirror, this window, and this revelation is part of a transformation, and that transformation is part of the passage, the process that I was connected to myself. And that transformation also connected me to this book that I did with my father. And so I went through a personal transformation when I did this project. I lost my father during the project, and I became a father multiple times over during this project. And so personal identity, personal transformation, as well as Karabagh is a place in total transformation, right? 20 years ago, hardly existed as what it exists now. So these transformative issues connected together for me. And so at the very heart of my book are a series of images of the sort. Images that have to do with shadow, with movement, with an attempt to deceive your perception, layering, ambiguity, really. And so this ambiguity that's in this set of images, to me, connects to my own identity. The other project that I want to talk about is what I did in Los Angeles. It's called Traces of Identity. So this is more directly to do with my own identity and my community. And so what I wanted to do there is basically hold a mirror up to myself, to try to look at what I'm about. And to do that, I held a mirror up to my own community of Los Angeles, the Armenians of Los Angeles. And so I started with the traditional stuff, right? Here is a christening. This is in Hollywood. So this is not the kind of singularity that you may find, singular identity you may find in Karabagh, but it is much more like the core Armenian identity that we have in the diaspora. This is another religious ceremony. It's the procession of the cross at Easter. This is in the Glendale Armenian Church, St. Mary's Armenian Church. Scouts, organizational life, very much important part of sort of the core Armenian community life that we have. And this is images from April 24 demonstrations. Every year, many youth and older people and very young people, like I take my kids every year, participate in demonstrations in front of the Turkish consulate, like this one, or marches through different parts of the city, or we visit the Armenian Genocide Memorial. But in this project, it was also very, very, very important for me, not only to look at the core, to look at the hybridity, which I will talk about in a minute, but also to look at the margins of our society, to embrace the Armenian identity that we have it as wide, as expansive a way as I could. And so I photographed alternative lifestyles. This is two men, two gay men, and I photographed lesbians also for this project, because they are part of our identity, who we are as Armenians. These are Armenian bikers. They get together every weekend, on the weekend, and they make a lot of noise, and they're called high riders, right? High riders. This is in a youth prison. This is an Armenian woman. She's 15 years old. When I photographed her at the time, she was one of the youngest youth prisoners in California. She had driven a couple of other Armenian guys to a place where they had this fight, and then while they were fighting, somebody intervened to stop the fight, and that guy got killed, and so she was charged with accessory to murder, and she was facing 8 years in prison. So this is also part of our identity. These are 3 Armenian guys in Ironwood State Prison. I also photographed a recovering drug addict. So this is a place called Palmdale, which is about an hour outside of Los Angeles in the California desert, and all Armenians there recovering from drug addiction. And also the same sort of approach, same sort of construction of images that I've done with Fatherland, where it's about, to me, it's about hybridity. It's about layering. It's about ambiguity. It's about an image having no real subject matter, in a sense. And so this is my wife and my son, and so that the mirror that I was talking about is also reflecting upon me and my family, because we are part of the community, and that is also part of my identity. This is in Little Armenia, in Hollywood. This is a schoolyard. And so this is sort of the cover image of this Traces of Identity project. And so this brings in a lot of the elements that it's part of my identity there. There's family, which is sort of the core identity. And then plus, there is the same kind of hybridity that is in the image has layering and out of focus elements that speak to that hybridity, that connect, infer that kind of identity. And so I want to end with an idea that we are one. I mean, we have, as a nation, we have global presence. We've had a global presence since the fall of Ani in 1064. It's 1,000 years we've had a global presence as Armenia and diaspora. And I don't see any reason why it should end anytime soon. Hybridity is part of that identity that we have, and I believe it's now part of our very DNA as Armenians, as Armenian nation. And so and not only diaspora, but here also. For instance, I taught a class in the summer in Tumo here, and a lot of the kids, born and bred here in Armenia, wear Western clothes, speak English, bring ideas of the West, different cultures into their world. In music, in the way they speak, in the way they walk, in the way they talk, in the way they dance. You've seen some of these Tumo videos, right? So it's already here. Hybridity is here. It is the past, it is the future, and we should embrace it. Thank you.